welcome to This Week in Pharma. My name is Jim Joyce. I'm the host of This Week in Pharma. This is a video podcast designed for people that work in the pharmaceutical industry or are interested in the pharmaceutical industry. What we'd like to do is give you some unique insights and perspective into what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry by talking about major trends, developments, possibly news, but probably more importantly, talking to the experts and people who really we think have some good insights into the community, into the pharmaceutical trends. We're delighted to have with us today Mr. Fred Hassan, the former CEO and chairman of Schering-Plough Pharmaceuticals, who's joining us from New York City. Good afternoon, Fred.
Hi, Jim. It's really a pleasure to be talking with you.
Very good. And I'm calling you, if I haven't told you, from Dublin, Ireland, where I live. So we're starting off on a very global basis. So just for some of our listeners who might not be familiar with Mr. Hassan's background, it's a global one, educated globally, starting in Pakistan, moving on to the Imperial College in London, training at Harvard Business School, and I believe joining the pharmaceutical industry in 1972.
That's correct.
Very good.
I joined Sandoz, which is now Novartis.
One of the first questions that I wanted to ask, or was very interested in ask, is I think it's about a year since the merger between Merck and Schering-Plough was announced, and it must be a big change of pace from being the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, which you had a lot of experience of. What do you miss about it?
So, Jim, we've all been through a lot of change at Schering-Plough in the last several months. And in my case, there's been also a lot of change. And what I miss the most is perhaps the energy and the excitement that you come from being in the middle of operations. I've been an operating executive for the last 3 decades.
Sure.
And I miss that excitement and energy. And I also believe that Schering-Plough had a very special culture. And I miss the people at Schering-Plough. It was a culture that made you feel proud to belong to a company, and it made work fun. And I do miss that atmosphere at Schering-Plough.
And so I'd imagine, and I don't know what it's like, but there also must be a lot of stresses, and the pace must be sometimes daunting when you're running such a massive operation. Is there anything about it that you don't miss, or that you're kind of happy to say goodbye to?
Now, Jim, I don't miss those 90-hour work weeks. I worked hard. It was an exciting time, but I worked very hard. I still work very hard. I'd like to stay engaged. And one reason I'm working hard these days is because I do want to remain very engaged, and I'm doing a lot of different things.
Okay, great. So so our objective on the call here is really to try to get some insights into trends, into what's going to happen in the pharmaceutical industry. So to help people out that maybe work in the space. When we were discussing this video podcast with you, you brought up a subject called the patent cliff.
Yeah.
And so, Fred, what is the patent cliff?
Yeah, this is a very profound change that's going through the pharmaceutical industry. If we go back to the mid to the late 90s or the early part of this century, Jim, our industry was growing double-digit rates year after year. And we were introducing as an industry anywhere from 5 to 8 blockbusters a year. Blockbusters meaning products that would ultimately grow to more than $1 billion a year in sales. So with that kind of new product output, our industry was growing, and R&D was developing. A lot of small companies were being formed. IPOs were occurring. Lots of good cooperation was occurring between the universities and the government, and also the private sector. So lots of change and lots of positive things were happening. Now those blockbusters from the mid-90s, late 90s, early part of this century, they are starting to get to a period when they're going to lose their patent life, the patents, or they're going to lose their market exclusivities. And the strange thing that's happening is that at the very time when these large products are going to start declining, our industry is running into some difficulty replacing these large products with new products. Mm-hmm. And that's the patent cliff issue that our industry is facing with. and almost every large company has had to undertake restructuring actions to deal with this difficult challenge.
The patent cliff. And so this is something, that for those of us in the pharmaceutical industry, we've always dealt with. We have a finite period of time to exclusively market and sell our products and to recoup the investment from research and development. And you talked about, do you think is it a productivity issue? Have the big diseases been discovered? Is it a focus? Is there something really specifically unique that you could point to?
So, Jim, if I were to make an assessment of why we're having this challenge, it boils down to three major issues. The first issue, I believe, are growing regulatory hurdles, especially in the post-Vioxx era. The last 5 years have been quite tough for the industry. The whole balance between safety and benefit seems to have shifted dramatically in favor of safety. We have regulatory authorities, especially the FDA, which is tending to be risk averse, and therefore the requirements to prove that products are safe and to prove that that the benefit is worth the risk, those have gone up, and the costs of trials have gone up. The delays have gone up as a result of that. So number one, regulatory hurdles.
Sure.
Number two is that the issue that you raised, which is that we're now looking for the higher hanging fruit. That the lower hanging fruit has been picked off. We're now looking for areas which are harder to go into, such as Alzheimer's, such as the more difficult parts of the cancer market. People are having to spend a lot of money in big trials to prove that the new medicines work. And the failure rates have also gone up because now we're in much higher risk areas. And finally, a new development which has been occurring in Europe for a while but is now starting to occur also in the US are payer hurdles. The people who do the reimbursements, they are wanting a lot more evidence of utility before they put you on reimbursement or before they give you a good copay or before they give you a good co-reimbursement for your medicine. And so these three factors are causing the challenges for our industry.
Okay. And so we talked about the patent cliff, and one of the points that you had brought up in our preparation was this issue of this has been reflected in the stock prices. So the patent cliff. So is it reflected in the stock prices, and if so, how?
Jim, there was a time when our industry enjoyed very good forward price earnings multiples. Forward price earnings multiple means the confidence that the investors have in the future of the company, and they therefore give a much higher multiple on earnings for the market price, for the shareholder price. And those were as high as the 30s to the mid 30s in the late 90s and the early part of this century. Those multiples have now shrunk to the high single digit area for some of the classical pharmaceutical companies and to the low double digit area for what's known as the diversified pharmaceutical companies. And this is something which is being reflected. The risk which is now growing in the industry is showing up in the multiples shrinking from the 30 area to the single digit area. And that's also caused some investors to be concerned. And one of the things that gives me a lot of concern is that money that was going into the small company sector is starting to shrink. And that's causing a lot of the smaller companies to have very little cash left to complete their projects. And if the small company sector shrinks in R&D, then there is a lot less to work with in terms of new sources of R&D projects for the bigger companies. So we would really very much like to see this whole thing get reversed as soon as possible.
And so